Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Gigi and today I'm going to be talking about a more serious topic, which is the HBO documentary Leaving Neverland. So if you don't know what that documentary is about, it's basically Michael Jackson's victims' account of their alleged sexual abuse that happened to them in the 1980s and the 1990s. So this documentary premiered I think it premiered in January or something, and I've been meaning to make this video for a while, but the reason why I've been holding off is because as people have been discussing it more, there's been more evidence that's been shown and that has come out. So I just wanted to make sure I had all the facts 100% correct before talking about it. I really just wanted to make this video because I grew up listening to Michael Jackson, as I'm sure a lot of you have, and hearing these allegations is very hard, but at the same time, like, I don't think that I can just be complicit in just pretending it didn't happen just because I love Michael Jackson, especially with the Surviving R. Kelly documentary that just came out. I just feel like I couldn't just sit back and just act like nothing's going on when there's a very real possibility that people were hurt by Michael Jackson. So without further ado, I guess let's get started. So this documentary basically follows the accounts of two men that are accusing Michael Jackson of abusing them. Their names are Wade Robson and James Safechuck. I think they're both in their 30s now, if I'm correct. Wade Robson is 36 now and James Safechuck is 41 now. So Wade Robson was 5 years old when he first met Michael Jackson and 7 years old when the abuse allegedly started. And I think that James Safechuck was a little bit older. I want to say he was like 10 or 11 when he first met Michael and the abuse started like right away. So what I thought was interesting about this documentary is that it was told completely from the point of view of the victims. The first hour of the documentary is really just focusing on the fact that these people were fans of Michael, how they met him, and how they bonded with him before the abuse started. It's just so hard to understand the level of fame that Michael Jackson was on at the time in like the 1980s and 1990s. It is like his level of fame is like an incomprehensible level of fame that we can't understand today, even in this time of social media where we have like so much access to celebrities. Michael Jackson was such a huge star and still is today. So the grooming process for these children obviously started long before they even met Michael, which they made very clear in their stories, because both of these children met Michael when they were already huge fans. So the grooming process for this is just it's on like another level. These children already saw Michael Jackson as an idol and as someone godlike that they couldn't even begin to compare to. Wade Robson, as I said, met Michael Jackson through a dancing competition that his mom put him in when he was 5 years old, and James Safechuck met Michael when he was a little bit older and was working on commercials. He actually worked on a Pepsi commercial with Michael.
Looking for me?
So what has people questioning these two men is the fact that they both testified for Michael Jackson in 1993 when this abuse was first brought to light, not by them but by another child, and so they basically just defended him and they said that they had never experienced any abuse. But as we all know, we can't really go by the testimonies of two adolescents, especially at the time where, as I said, Michael Jackson was so famous that they would have done anything to protect him.
Yeah, you know, there's been different times where it'll just be me and Michael. Then there'll be other times where he has other friends over too. That's what, like what Brett said, it's just a slumber party. We just have a lot of fun.
So what I thought was very disturbing about this documentary is that it was very, very graphic, very detailed accounts of sexual misconduct and abuse by Michael Jackson to these children. And I also thought that it was very disturbing that James Safechuck described their relationship not as something that was meant to be shameful or abusive, but that he felt like him and Michael Jackson were in a romantic partnership, were in a romantic relationship. Despite this, Michael did obviously make efforts to keep this relationship a secret. Michael would often call the boys and go through the procedure of what they should ever do if they were ever caught doing what they were doing. So when he would have these phone calls with them, he would basically be training these boys by saying that if anybody found out what they were doing, that both of them would go to jail, aka Michael and the child that he was talking to would go to jail, and that people just don't understand their relationship and their love, but that doesn't mean that it's wrong. However, obviously these boys were very scared into keeping this a secret, which probably contributes to why they ended up testifying for Michael Jackson a few years later in 1993. So here's where the controversy comes in. Obviously, they testified for them when they were children, but they kept testifying for Michael even in their older age. So I want to say there was another trial in like 2005 where Wade Robson, who after all of this and after like not really being as close with Michael as he was as a child, basically formed his entire career around Michael Jackson and his love for Michael. So Wade Robson went on to being a choreographer who mainly stylized in Michael Jackson impersonations. He would do Michael Jackson themed tours. Basically his entire life revolved around Michael, and every time he was asked publicly what he thought about Michael Jackson or what he had to say about their relationship and what he thought about the abuse, Wade Robson had nothing but good things to say about Michael.
And you started as a youngster dancing with Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
Going to the ramp. No. Are you still friendly with Michael?
Yeah, we still talk every couple months, catch up.
You do, really?
Yeah.
Well, what's he like?
What's he like? He's a good guy.
He's a good guy?
Yeah.
Show me where he touched you. Nothing ever like.
One of the things I noticed about you, and this goes back to why I said you were a stand-up guy, we covered the trial, and you were one of the few people to stick up for him. And why do you think that was? And why was it important for you to stick up for him?
Because he's always been a friend to me.
James Safechuck was way less interviewed about these things, I think because he just was less in the public eye. But when he was asked, he also had good things to say. Both men say that the reason why they were able to testify for Michael even in their adulthood is supposedly because they never felt like what was happening between them was wrong. As mentioned earlier, they believed that this relationship that they had with Michael Jackson was a loving relationship, which is really disgusting to think about because these children were so young and Michael Jackson was in his 30s at the time of the abuse. I think that that's not to discredit these victims at all, but I think that that's a little bit weird to say just because Michael was kind of grooming them in the way of like, if people find out, they're gonna think that it's wrong and we're gonna go to jail. So clearly these men had some semblance that what was happening to them was wrong. Of course, again, not to discredit these victims at all. I'm just trying to bring up some inconsistencies in the story to kind of defend both sides. A psychologist spoke about this situation and said that it is very common for victims to feel this way and to feel shamed about what happened to them or to be in denial, and that is consequently why it would take them so long to come out about something, especially if it's accusing somebody that's in such a position of power and fame over them, such as Michael Jackson. Another reason why both Wade Robson and James Safechuck said that they didn't come out sooner is because it wasn't until they each had their own children that they saw how children are, that they realized, wow, when this was happening to me, I was a child and that was not right.
I never forgot one moment of what Michael did to me, but I was psychologically and emotionally completely unable and unwilling to understand that it was sexual abuse.
So what are you alleging that he actually did?
He sexually abused me from 7 years old until 14.
When you testified in 2005, and you took the stand and you raised your right hand and you swore under oath that nothing sexual ever happened between you and Michael Jackson, why did you lie?
You know, I said what I understood, and I said what I was able to say. From 7 years old, from day one of the abuse, Michael told me that we loved each other and that this was love, that this was an expression of our love. And then you'd follow that up with, you know, but if you ever tell anyone what we're doing, both of our lives and our careers will be over.
People think that they're just trying to tarnish Michael's name, which would make sense, but again, I'm trying to see this as objectively as possible. The only person in Michael Jackson's family that has ever been vocal about the fact that Michael might be a pedophile and something might be wrong with him is actually his younger sister, LaToya.
What kind of evidence do you have that your brother did in fact sexually abuse these young boys?
I want you to know that there aren't really any evidence. The only thing that I know of, and my mother has actually shown me these things. She's the one that was outraged and brought them to me. That were checks that were written to the little boy's parents. And there are 2 checks that I know of that she has shown me. And it's for a substantial amount of money. Apparently, it was given for some reason. I don't know why, but I do know that she was outraged during that particular time. This is around 84, mind you. And she would say things like, I can't stand this. He's nothing but a I can't stand this. But the only reason I'm speaking up is because I'm an abused victim, and I don't want to see anyone else hurt like that, because I know what it feels like to be hurt. Let me ask you a question. What 35-year-old man do you know that sleeps with little boys and stays with them for a week or 2 weeks or whatever?
As you saw in those clips, LaToya was very vocal about this, and it's interesting because at the time LaToya was kind of seen as the black sheep of the family because she was so rebellious, and that played a role in why people didn't really believe her, because they just felt that she was just saying things to tarnish the Jackson name, to be rebellious against her family and against her brothers and everything. But personally, she said this with such conviction, with such passion. Why would she throw her brother under the bus for something like this if she didn't think it was true? So after seeing this, I just became very, very skeptical of Michael, even as a huge fan. Like, at this point, I was beginning to believe all of these accusations, especially considering, obviously, people always defend Michael by being like, he never got to have a childhood. That's why he was so childlike. That's why he spent all this time with children. He just loved children. But I'm sorry, I don't think it's normal for a 30-year-old man to be sleeping in the same bed as a child, regardless of the trauma that they might have experienced themselves as a child. Like, that's just unacceptable to me. And the fact that people are using his traumatic childhood as justification for this type of behavior is kind of just disgusting to me. Because when you think about the fact that, like, all of his siblings were famous too from a very young age. Obviously, Michael was one of the youngest, being only 5 years old. But all of his siblings also suffered abuse at the hands of their father, Joe Jackson, and also dealt with fame from a very young age. So if this was the right justification, why did none of his other siblings get caught up in anything like this? Why did none of his other siblings have this very public image of being so close to children to the point where it became a little bit uncomfortable for everybody watching? I don't know. Honestly, I'm really making this video as a way to process my own thoughts about this whole situation. I still don't know what to think, to be honest. Recently, I think that there was more evidence that came out that these accusers might be lying, but the only thing I have to say about this is I think that we cannot just sit back and say these people are lying without watching the documentary. I know a lot of people just didn't watch the documentary because of their love for Michael Jackson, and they didn't want to face the truth. But as his fan, I felt that it was my responsibility to do so because we weren't there. We have no idea what really went on behind closed doors. And if this man was a pedophile, who are we to say that he wasn't? The only ones that really know what happened are Michael Jackson and these children, his victims. I just kind of wanted to open the discussion. What do you guys think about this? I'm really still processing. I don't know what to believe, but to be honest, at this point, I'm kind of leaning more towards Michael Jackson was a pedophile and did abuse these children. However, there is a lot of evidence that these men may be lying and just trying to get some money out of it. My thoughts on that are, as horrible as this may sound, they could be lying, but I don't think that that completely annuls the fact that Michael Jackson was probably a pedophile, because this other child that isn't even a part of the documentary, I'm blanking on his name right now, I might just like insert it somewhere, also accused Michael and disappeared after he was paid off, and we haven't heard from him since. So to me, that could just mean even if Michael Jackson didn't abuse Wade Robson and James Safechuck, that does not mean that he didn't abuse other children possibly like them. So that's just something that I wanted to keep in mind, something that I wanted to discuss. What are your thoughts on the documentary? Did you like it? Did you grow up listening to Michael Jackson? Michael Jackson played a huge part in my childhood. My father loved him, played him all the time for me and my siblings. So hearing this, and honestly even hearing that he died, I was just very much in denial. I just had to watch the documentary and I just had to come on here and talk about it. So please leave your thoughts down below. Let's have a discussion. As evidence keeps coming out, I will probably be updating more on the situation. But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.